I am pleased to be with you tonight to introduce our guest speaker, Mr. James Gardner. James is a certified athletic therapist, certified strength and conditioning specialist, and registered kinesiologist from Toronto, Canada. He is currently completing his master's in kinesiology and health sciences with a focus on sport injury and Canadian varsity sport. He currently serves as the Elite and Developmental Sports Program Coordinator and Lead Performance Coach at Lyford Key International School in Nassau. He has been brought on as a consultant to assist in various capacities within the athletic training department. Mr. Gardner previously held positions with York University's sports medicine team from 2013 to 2018. Also with the Toronto Blue Jays organization from 2005 to 2013. He's a firm believer in the natural union between athletic training and strength and conditioning. James strives to remain current in the most recent evidence-based practices and practical applications. He has presented at the Ontario Athletic Therapists Association Symposium on the hip, as well as the Canadian Athletic Therapists Association National Conference on overhead athletic training and rehab, and is also scheduled to present again this year on torso integration in rehab and training. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming our speaker, Mr. James Gardner.
All right, so I'm not going to use a mic. If you can't hear me, just put up your hand and I'll talk a little bit louder. First and foremost, thank you to University of Bahamas for hosting me. Sasha, Keitha, Ms. Roll, thank you very much for this opportunity. And thank you all for being here. I know it's been probably a long day for some of you. Pretty hot out here every day from a Canadian, so everybody coming from work, from whatever you've been doing all day, and taking the extra time to be here, much appreciated. So hopefully you get something out of tonight, more than that long-winded whole bunch of education that I've gone through. That's not my real bio. We'll get to my real bio. I'm here to present on this injury deterrence and sport training. I don't see a separation between the two. And I think that's one thing that as professionals, as coaches, as athletes, we tend to compartmentalize things. But when it comes to injury deterrence or injury prevention, it goes hand in hand with strength and conditioning, with training for a sport. Whether you're training to be an everyday athlete, just getting through life, walking upstairs, trying to make it to 95 and still be active, or Mr. Burrows and I were just chatting about a common athlete that we both know, that he knows a lot better than I do, a baseball player who's come from here and is now playing professional in an organization that I used to work for. So blending these two is more than just saying we're going to blend them. We actually have to build in purposeful activity for our athletes, and it has to be relevant to those athletes for what they need to do. I think that's the key factor in performance, and that's the key factor in being successful as a practitioner. Okay? So this is an integrated model. I spent a lot of time working as just an athletic therapist. I spent a lot of time working with strength coaches who were very advanced, very progressive in nature in terms of what they were doing in the gym with athletes. I learned so much from them that I certified secondarily in that so that I could have the dialogue with them to be on the same level, so we could speak the same language. I'll just move through this rather quickly. So here's my real bio and my real background. First and foremost, I'm a husband and a father, and I think that's opened a lot of doors for me in terms of perspective. I now can empathize a little bit more with athletes. I can empathize with those that walk into the room and say that is actually somebody's child. It's not just number 87 from the football field. I think that makes a difference when you're handling people, when you're talking to people on a day-to-day basis. The husband part, that is what it is. I am Canadian, so neutral. Those are my certifications. Spent a lot of time with those. Really, the background goes, I was every kid that you've ever seen play sports. I wanted to play sports professionally. I found one that I liked. I found two that I liked. I found one that I was a little bit better at, and then I ran with that. So I played baseball to a decent level, ended up in Division II school in the States, and then transferred back to Canada to finish my degree. and in doing so, found a couple mentors who really took me down the road that I needed to get on, and that was working with people in a different capacity. And I'm not saying this to spend a whole lot of time on my background and look at me, but just to give you some perspective as to where I'm delivering this information from. Okay? Some of these are big terms. I think the biggest one here is this one right here. And that's a process. I've done a lot of things wrong in my career training athletes. I've done a lot of things wrong treating athletes. I've done a lot of things that I thought were right at the time that I now look back on, and I've changed. Because that ability to adapt as a practitioner, whether you're a coach, a teacher, a parent, that ability to adapt as you go makes the biggest difference for change in the long term. So that one for me is huge. And then the backwards career path, I say it's backwards only from a linear perspective of time. I started out in professional sports, which going through school, man, that's the epitome. I need to work in pro sports. That's where it's at. It's where it's on TV, everybody knows who that is, everybody knows what I'm doing, all kinds of those things. After professional baseball, I moved up the ranks to university in Canada. And since that job at the University in Canada, I've now moved on to working with kids. And I did this earlier, and I talked about it this way, where I went like from pro sports to kids, and then I just, like you think of the last 10 minutes, just kind of flipped it. And it's actually the reverse, because up here with kids, this is where I can have the most impact. This is where they learn the most. College athletes, still better than pro athletes for the most part. A lot of pro athletes get ego, they're a little bit older, they don't want to listen, they don't want to learn. Not because they don't want to, but actually because their patterns have been so ingrained, their movement patterns have been so ingrained over time that they don't have as great an ability to adapt as some of the younger athletes. So that's kind of the career path. And then some of those pictures up there just to show you what the day-to-day looks like in our world. Some of the things that we deal with is a broken tib fib, that's a tib fib fracture in a field hockey athlete. That's my son playing in the middle of the football field, about 45 minutes before game time with our starting linebacker. This guy over here, spent a ton of time with him. He's our starting center at the university. Broken fibula, 3 torn ligaments in his ankle, and he's a starting center. So if you don't know football, that's the guy who snaps the ball to the quarterback and then has to take some other guy coming at him and stop him from getting behind him. So a broken fibula and torn ankle ligaments in the leg that you need to plant off of, big deal. So we rehabbed him, and he ended up winning the Grey Cup in his first year as a pro. So the Grey Cup is a championship in Canadian football. So he brought it back just as a little thank you. And then up here, this is how soccer's really played, if you're wondering. This is our National University Championship. That's all snow behind him. I'm the guy in the toque, the funny hat, and the winter jacket while he's playing soccer in shorts. And then this is an ACL over here that we were just monitoring post-recovery for infection. That's just a little bit of background. It's a wide scope that we deal with. But here's the overview of the real presentation. Tonight, the goal is just to give you an idea of what an integrated model may, in my opinion, should look like. Again, my biases are mine. Not everybody has to do things the same way. But from my background, I've developed to the point where seeing individuals as individuals goes a long way. I don't treat every baseball athlete like a baseball athlete. You know, I'm going to treat them like the individual that walks in front of me. I'm going to talk to them like the human that walked in front of me, see how they move, see how they respond, do all these things. Bulletproofing your athletes, one that I believe in. I'll walk you through this with a demo with Mr. Mullins. Going to help me out with some demo up here at the front. Take pictures, come down closer, ask questions as we go. We'll have this as interactive as it needs to be. If you have a question, just pop your hand up. I'm happy to answer it. There'll be a Q&A at the end as well. Athlete screening, which is something that we do on a regular basis and has huge value. Okay, and then a 5-step screen. So we're going to take you through. I'm going to walk you through a 5-step screen that we use as holistically with athletes, and I'll walk you through the narrative of how we do that. Okay, and then the last one I want to show you is our rules to move by. Some 4 or 5 tips that I give to every person on the day-to-day, so that they can manage their everyday athleticism. All right, and then the Q&A at the end. So, an integrated model. Here's what it looks like, in my opinion. Okay, we're talking strength and conditioning, we're talking training, we're talking movement, we're talking injury prevention. I kind of stay away from prevention because there's certain things in sports that can't be prevented, I don't think. So deterrence is probably a better word for me. It's where I go to deterrence as opposed to prevention. bullet points, and I can get this presentation if you want afterwards. I can get it to you, make it public, however. The bullet points are where we're going to sit. So that first one is huge. Just because an athlete can do everything you ask them doesn't mean they're a good mover. So if you have access to somebody, Sasha, Shakitha, the athletic trainers here at UB, they want to be utilized for that. You know, they want to make sure that your athletes are stable where they need to be stable and mobile where they need to be mobile. And that's a little bit more practitioner driven than day-to-day, so if you don't understand some of the language, I'm happy to clarify too. But that's a big one. We talk about that all the time. Layman's terms, layperson's terms, is basically you need to make sure that they can do what you're asking them to do before you have them do it. Coming back to our screen, that's where the value of an athlete's screen comes into play. If I'm asking someone to do a program or a rehab program that they're not ready for, A, they're going to fail, B, they won't come back, and C, they won't be successful on the field when they get there, because they will get there eventually, whether they use my program or not. Okay? Then we're going to go through screens. So screens for athletes need to be done on a regular basis. Just as evaluations are done in school, just as workplace evaluations are done everywhere you work, they need to be done with regularity. Time points on the schedule, where there's goals in mind, preseason, mid-season, multiple mid-season, whatever's relevant to your sport, and post-season. It gives you targets. Keeps you on target as a practitioner, keeps you on target as a coach, keeps your trainer, therapist, strength coach on target as a coach if you're directing, as an athletic director. Where are our targets for? Whatever the case may be, having multiple sessions throughout the year holds everybody accountable. And it gives something for Ken and all the track athletes to work towards as they're going through the season as well. Simple check-ins, not to make the work harder, to have everybody who's involved in the athletic performance realm have something to strive for and tend to revert back to. Okay? Common athlete postures. So this is where I rely on coaches all the time. Coaches, athletes, parents, these are the best people from an observation standpoint. I don't know badminton, so I wouldn't tell you this is how a badminton athlete needs to move. I'd ask the coach. I'd ask the athlete. I'd watch them move. I'd study video, whatever it may take. But this is where you can direct your strength and conditioning coaches, your trainers, your physiotherapists, your therapists that you see, your chiropractor, whoever is in charge of the treatment. Your observations are valuable. And if they're willing to listen, they're going to take something from it. Simple things. You don't need to have formal education to understand common complaints in athletes. How many track athletes in the room, or you work with track athletes? One or two? Shin pain. Pretty regular? Nope. Shin pain? Shin? Ever get shin pain? Yeah. Ever get low back pain? Ever get low back pain? I mean, you're kind of bulletproof. This guy just walks in the training room downstairs. So I come in here and consult with Shakitha and Sasha, and I'm pushing on the spot just because we can. And this guy just comes in, he's just like, I just need a little tune-up. I got these little things, I don't really have anything wrong, but like, this guy takes care of his body, and like, even if one little thing goes wrong, he checks in, just say, hey, am I okay? I know I'm okay, but am I okay? Right? So, never really had an issue. So, bad example, but I mean, again, low back pain, hamstring pain, pretty common in track athletes, right? So you have, as a coach, can bring that forward to a therapist, to a strength and conditioning coach, and say, hey, listen, like, 60% of our athletes are getting sore right here. I still don't really understand track because they only go in one direction around things. So that's a talking point for me as a therapist and as a coach. It's like let's level that out. But we're talking baseball athletes, and they throw with one side all the time. So they're constantly rotating one way. So as a therapist, I'm thinking, okay, well, I should know where the trigger points are going to be, where the issue points are going to be. But so would the coach. The coach would say, they always get sore right here. It's the rotary cuff. Rotator cuff. Anyway, or posterior shoulder, or oblique, or groin in hockey, or whatever the case may be. But your observations help shape what a program should look like with somebody who knows what they're doing. Okay? And then understanding the sport demands, that can be as simple as how many games they play in a week. Are you tracking minutes? Are you tracking throws? Are you tracking free throws? Are you tracking jumps? Are you tracking plyometric times they hit the track? What are you tracking? And you don't need a whole bunch of technology to do that. It can be as simple or as complex as you need. The world of sports science is like way up here in terms of what some places are doing. I think it's a bit overkill, but observing something, again, gives everybody else something to work on. By just observing and not noting it, I think we're losing a lot of information. And Keith and Sasha can speak to this as trainers, as athletic trainers. You can't be everywhere to watch everything. So you need to get your information from somewhere. And reliable sources as coaches, parents, whoever, super valuable. All right, and then the last one, off-field training value at UB and anywhere really. Programming, whether it's injury deterrence, strength and conditioning, a blended model, all is geared towards helping that athlete perform at a higher level. However you want to determine performance. Recovery time. I felt better 30 seconds quicker. I felt better 3 days earlier. I ran faster. I swam faster. I jumped higher. I was able to score more points. I was able to get back to play quicker than what the doctor told me I was going to be able to get back to play. So whatever the targets are, they need to be geared towards something. And the value of the off-field training is huge. The soccer players that I've worked with in the past, they love playing soccer. Their adherence rate to the lifting program that we had them doing in the gym was below 10%. Why we didn't hurt? We play soccer all the time. We're really good at it. That's my soccer. But we're really good at soccer anyway. So we took a look at some of their movements and we said, okay, we need to do some things in the off-season. We can evaluate that. So we know they're not in the gym, so we know we're missing out on a few things. All right. The bottom line here, be a good mover. So what does that mean? You have to be able to do what they need to do. A little tent with your hands, your fingers are going to stay in touch with the ground, but you're going to camp out on the ground a little bit. So you make a little hut with the hand, externally rotate the shoulder. So all I'm doing here is a simple, I'll exaggerate, but here I'm on the ground. Can you see this, okay? So then I'm going to externally rotate, which means the ball and socket joint, this joint, is actually rotating outward. So the elbow is turning inward. All I'm doing is creating, you're okay, you can rest now. You're creating better congruency of the shoulder joint. Now you're asking the rotator cuff to do what it's actually meant to do. Align the shoulder in the joint and support the shoulder girdle out in space. When I throw a baseball, when I shoot a jumper, when I swim, when I do whatever. Yes?
Can you assume the position that he's on his forearm against?
Sure. Yeah.
Forearm? Yes.
Forearm, yeah.
I always assume that the hip is supposed to be lower.
Okay. Yeah, so we really just want, I mean, there is a natural curve in the spine that we need to allow to happen. What I'll talk about the hips later on as well, and in some of like the other plank movements that we do. I'm okay with this position from an observational standpoint, but when I get him to squeeze his butt cheeks, what happens? His pelvis looks like it lowers, right? Like his hips look like they lower. So all he's doing when he squeezes his bum and his hamstrings is actually posteriorly tilting the pelvis. So he's taking the pelvis from doing this, I'll exaggerate. He's going to squeeze his butt cheeks together. There. What else turns on when you squeeze your butt cheeks? Do you feel it? Yes. His anterior core has to turn on. He has to turn on his anterior chain, so his front side, when he squeezes his butt cheeks. You don't believe me? Stand up. You go stand up. Anybody who wants to stand up, stand up. So stand up. And if you feel like, man, I've been sitting all day, like I just feel awful right now, and we'll get to some of these, use a lot of cues for this, but all I want you to do is squeeze your butt cheeks together. So squeeze them together. And what happens? Really what we want to have happen throughout the day, okay? That's what we want to have happen. If my belt buckle's facing down the majority of the day, where am I going to have pain? My low back. Yeah, so how do I take away low back pain? This is a general statement, but what do I have to turn on? Yeah, your core, but how do I straighten my core? We just did it. Yeah, squeeze your butt. Did my low back pain go away? Maybe not, but over time, that's core strengthening. That's day-to-day core strengthening. If you sit in a chair, I just did this with a swimmer the other day. You guys can sit back down, that's awesome. Unless you want to stand, you can stand. I'm not a big fan of sitting all day, so if you're not either, that's fine. So I just did this. We're going to get there, I promise. I go off on tangents, I forgot to mention that. But okay, so I deal with a swimmer. She's a very high-level swimmer. She's 14 years old. She actually just squatted more than her body weight yesterday, and then today she was like, hey, James, my legs are sore. And I was like, all right, great, we did something. But she was talking about posture, and she was sitting like this. She's a swimmer. She's like this all the time. And she's a teenager. She's just like, the world is whatever, right? So if I turn on her butt cheeks, and I tell her in a different way than turn on your butt cheeks, but I tell her engage, she does that, you do that in your chair and see what happens to your posture of your shoulders. I saw you just draw your shoulders back. If I turn on my posterior chain while I'm sitting, I actually fix what's happening in my upper body as well. There is no separation in the body. There's no part of your body that's not somehow connected through fascia, through viscera, through your organs. Somehow, some way, you're connected all the way through. So I tell athletes all the time, and I think you've been in the training room, and I definitely know you guys have been in the training room. For every athlete I think that I've seen in this university campus, they spend more time sitting than they do training all day. And I'm sure most of you do as well. Here's a great opportunity to engage your core. I don't need to go to the gym and do 500 sit-ups. I need to hold this for 2 minutes at a time until I forget about it and then draw it back in and do it again. Right? Because I know my butt doesn't look great like this. So when I engage it, my pants fill out. I like that. It's good. We used to call it hockey butt when I was younger. But that's where we're at. So if you can do that for times through the day, you're going to make a difference. And in athletes, and in high school athletes, for sure. Because they're sitting way more than they're playing the sport, believe it or not. They're in the pool 15 hours a week, great. How long are they in the classroom for? 40. Yeah, more than that, right? So, all right, so let's go to pressing. Pressing, I'm just going to get you to take these real quick.
Sorry, James, before we go into pressing, plank,
Yeah.
Is there a benefit from doing it forearms versus on the hands for your core, or is it just focusing on
Sure, so like EMG studies would say the lesser points of contact or the lesser spaces of support that you have, the more engagement of your central torso.
Okay.
So if I take that to one hand, my core is going to be engaged. But it depends, again, like definition of a core, I would say rib cage to knees. Some wouldn't agree, but that's my look at it. Okay, so pressing. Pressing is anything where you take weights and push it away. All right? So you're going to take those weights and you're going to press them up overhead. Okay? Keep going. That's good. That's good. So this isn't a heavy weight for him, but you can assume that if I made this weight heavier and heavier, it would be harder and harder. There's going to be a common theme here. Okay? And one of the common themes is that as he gets fatigued, so drop to one knee for me. So if I change the position, now I'm going to say press overhead again. I'm going to change his position, and you'll see from standing to kneeling, keep going. Oh, that's tired. So as he goes, we'll see a break in his posture. You can put him back down. Put him back down. Yeah, you can put him on the ground. That's good. So, but stay on one knee if you're comfortable. I'm not going to give you bursitis on his patella. That's me if it happens tomorrow. Okay. All right. So if I'm here, you see him press like this. Okay. And then when it gets heavy, what's he going to do? Create momentum and press up overhead. When I put him to one knee, his first move actually when he went to press was here. I don't know if you saw it. So before I have an athlete press, and I worked in an organization in professional baseball that said no pitcher is going to press overhead for a couple years until we validated that and said no pitcher is going to press overhead unless they know how to press overhead. Because then they can. Why not? He knows how. He knows how to support himself. So again, I'm going to get him to turn on his glute and hamstring on the front side. How do I get him to do that in that position? You can't really squeeze your butt cheeks together in this position. It's going to be weird. So I get him to drive his heel down into the ground. And his hamstring is going to turn on. Before you press that weight overhead, I want you to be as stable as you can there. I talk about 90-degree angles with athletes all the time. Hip, knee, ankle. 90, 90, 90. There's your stability. Take the weights again. Find that hamstring first. Press up overhead. His ability to now control his torso, much better. If I take that to standing and I say barbell press with 75 pounds on either side, I wouldn't, but I mean if it was going to, I'd have him do the same thing. Find an athletic stance, engage the ground through the heels, and what we talked about with the plank maneuver, just torquing a little bit, externally rotating the shoulder, I would do the feet. So then I externally rotate with the feet, so that actually the hip is externally rotating, the feet don't move, create a little arch in the foot, and I have a better space of stability to work from. So he's stable before he goes. All right, pulling. Do a hinge for me, and just do a row, like an alternating row. So you're going to hinge and just dumbbell row for me. We haven't talked about doing this, so he doesn't know what I'm going to ask him to do, but here we go. Good. I mean, you're looking at like poetry in motion. Right? I mean, he does most of these things pretty well. But you can imagine if I put 90-pound weights in his hands, and you've seen some of this in the gym if you've been to the gym, or on YouTube, or whatever you watch, where if I get down in this position and I'm just doing this, I want to get the most, and I'm making as much noise as I can. That's great if I'm trying to make a video that sounds like the barnyard, or if that's my goal. If my goal is to lift as much weight as I can and not really care about form, which is fine. That's a great goal too. If that's my goal, that's awesome. But in athletics, and we're talking about integrating strength and conditioning into injury deterrence, I want my athlete to understand why he's doing, she's doing what they're doing, and how to be successful without having Sasha, Shakitha, whoever there, making sure he's doing it right. We build this into our athletes. We empower athletes to be able to do this stuff on their own. Little things like, hey, squeeze your butt cheeks. Hey, wait for a punch to, you're expecting a sucker punch all day long. So we talk about with athletes all the time. Teenage athletes, do that stuff. Right? So then from a knee, from a press, from a pull, so from a pulling standpoint, rotation is what happens. If I use a heavy weight on this side, and I rotate heavily, where am I going to get sore for the most part? Low back probably, or like some of the weaker, smaller muscles in my shoulder. But if I get that same amount of weight, I use the ground, I use my core, I somehow engage my hamstrings, and I pull, I may have to use less weight, but I'm going to execute that a whole lot better, and I'm creating a better foundation to work from. Okay? Awesome. Thank you for your help. That's all. You can take the weights and keep doing stuff. Okay, so that's those ones. I don't have a watch on either. Just give me like a
6:36.
6:36. Okay, we good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a bit of we'll go off on some tangents. Okay, so squatting and hinging, I want to show you some video footage. And the reason I want to show you some video footage is because wrong way. Is because we had a couple athletes that really demonstrated this, and I just picked two random athletes, but one of them was an ACL surgery, was a post-operative ACL surgery, and we'll get to those. And the other was a volleyball player, and I'll discuss some of her injuries as well. I also want to do male-female, so you can see the differences in terms of some of the pliability of the tissue. In terms of movement prep, this is warm-up. This is warm-up. This is dynamic warm-up. Everybody has a catchy term for this. This is movement prep. Before athletes start, they need to prepare for movement. And it needs to look like this, in my opinion. This big three, I didn't name them that, somebody else did, I just love them, has to be before athletes start. Before I start moving, I need my athlete to know where their core is. I need them to know that their spine is there. I need their brain and their body to connect here. And this is how we'll execute movement prep. From 8 to 80. The more I use my foot on the ground, the more feedback my brain gets. The more I use my hand tactily, holding something, the more feedback my brain gets. Those are distal points, they're far away from my brain, that centralize information. Okay? So that's why we use these, but these ones here support the midsection. So the anterior plank, Ken just showed you. That's the anterior chain plank. The side plank, simply just up on the side. Okay? So when I get on the side to demo a plank, I want to make sure hips are stacked. I want to make sure elbow is under shoulder. I don't do a ton of long lever side plank. I just think that causes too much impaction in the shoulder joint. They can't really support from that area. They can't torque in that position. I'm going to curl some things, some tendons in the front side that just isn't good. And then my ankle stack, my knees stack, my pelvis stacks, and my belly button's pointed straight ahead, and so is my belt buckle. I'm not like this, which I see a lot of people do in the gym. They like get some torsion going, their pelvis is completely rotated. The ability here, or the ability to stay stacked, is your ability to control what your spine is. Okay? You don't need a stable spine in sports, but you need to support your spine in sports, for sure. Posterior chain plank is like your standard glute ham bridge, something like that. So if I'm going to get up on this table, no shoes on the table, that's cool. I'm going to do a posterior bridge. I'm going to do a posterior bridge. Same thing, I'm going to lie down. My first move that I always talk to athletes about when I'm doing a posterior bridge
What? Yeah. Yeah, hips. What else? Yep, hamstring glute complex. They work together. So what do? Push my heels down into the ground. As soon as I turn my heels down into the ground, what happens to my anterior chain? It turns on. Now if I want to lift, I'm already engaged here. And I hinge. Where did all that motion happen? L3, L4, S1, L5. Where did herniated disc come from? What levels? L4, L5, S1. That's where everybody has low back pain. Herniated disc is just like a little disc between the vertebrae and your low back. It's because when we go to stand up every day out of a chair, and we don't think about using the ground, every day out of a chair, and we don't think about using the ground, where did that motion just come from? The biggest force we have as humans that are bipedal, we must utilize it in the day-to-day. It's part of education of athletes. Must utilize it in the day-to-day. Part of education of athletes. Think about the top of your head going straight to the sky instead of creating momentum to get out of the chair. But it's true. Watch. Watch at the end of the class. At the end of this talk. Right? I'm guilty. Not perfect, for sure. But like, even when I go to sit, stand. Not stand. When I walk, sometimes I'll do this, and I'm like, oh, not good. Wake up again. But the more often you can train this, the better you're going to be able to train extremity motion. Throwing a baseball, swimming, running, kicking, badminton, whatever it is that you do. Okay, the next part. So those are the three that we'll always do as part of movement prep, because I want their core prep before they start anything. I had a pedorthist say, don't ever put your shoes on without untying them. You're going to ruin them. Any pedorthists in the room? Right. So the next part is accessing all planes of motion. Okay, sagittal plane, frontal plane, transverse planes. So they got to do something that rotates, they got to do something that bounds, and they got to do something laterally. I don't care if the sport is only straight ahead and backwards. You need to tap into all planes of motion, because no matter what, your body's going to be doing that when you run. Nobody is completely rigid when they run. They work around a spine that is hopefully somewhat stable, but there's still some rotational stuff happening. Okay? So all planes of motion need to be accessed. All joints need to be loaded systematically. Systematically? I'm not doing plyos right out the gate. I'm not just going to jump. Because I'm going to do something, because I'm old and not very athletic, as you can just see. But I'm going to load them systematically. So I'm going to start with isometrics. When I push into a wall if I'm a baseball player, or I push into a wall if I'm a thrower, or I do whatever where I'm actually generating force into a stable base, and that force is giving it back to me. Then I've turned on musculature. My neuromuscular system is now connected. Now I can start doing some through the range of motion type sport stuff, baseball stuff, basketball stuff, whatever the warm-up may be. Okay? Systematically is huge. Just throwing a bunch of stuff together, it's great. You're going to make an athlete sweat. That's a warm-up. You just warmed up, literally. This is movement prep. This is geared towards movement. You want them to be prepared for what is about to happen. Practice, game, etc. Okay? And then the last one, mindfulness. Some element of mindfulness. You don't have to be a guru. You don't have to be a Vishnu at the ashram. You don't need to be anything other than provide an outlet for athletes, your kids, whoever you work with, an opportunity to cut off all the distractions they've had up until that point. If I walk into the gym and I've just failed 3 tests in the day, or my girlfriend just broke up with me, or I guarantee I'm not going to perform as well as I could. So we provide an opportunity to sort of clear that space. Reflect on the things that we're about to do, give them a goal, give them a target. There's lots of options for something, mindfulness, to get athletes ready to go. All right. Athlete screening, I think we've beaten this one in, right? But again, it's huge to look at the importance of athlete screening. Athlete screening, again, gives you time points you can go back and reflect on. All right? Supplemental load is meant, the bottom line there, it's meant to enhance performance. Training isn't meant to be more work for athletes. Coaches? Me? Yeah, for sure. Go do more, because you haven't done enough. What? Go run a whole bunch more because you're not listening. Like that's standard in grade school. Okay. using exercise, using movement as punishment, guess what? It deters people from wanting to do it. It becomes a negative association, intent and impact. Okay? All right. Let's move quickly into, here's the athlete screening model. If you want to write that down, that's pretty legit. That's not my own creation, but that's a creation that I've worked on with professionals in multiple fields: baseball, hockey, basketball, SFMA, FMS, like all these people that have their own sort of like training systems. These are the ones that are go-tos for myself, for us, for whoever, for athletes that I work with. I want to know what an athlete looks like when they hip hinge. I want to know this star excursion test for a number of reasons. I'll demo what that is. Video. Squat, overhead squat, and then the additional based on. So SNA is sport need assessment. Each sport has its own necessary components that need to be addressed. All right. So I think this is the one where I have to go back to the computer and do the escape thing. So this is a hip hinge. This may take a minute to load up, I think. Just give me a second. Oh, the mouse, that's why. Is that right? Yeah. Yes, the mouse. Okay, got it. This is a dowel hip hinge. Okay? Put a dowel on his back, 5 points of contact, and we're seeing where that's coming off his back. Anybody guess what sport he is? Baseball? No. Football. Football? I mean football. So yeah, football, soccer. Yeah. Okay? Watch that one more time. Pretty good, right? Overall, I don't know. Depends on what you're looking for, I guess. But pretty good. So I want you to show you. Uh-oh. What did I do? Yeah. Same move, same instructions, looks different. She looks different than him, yes, physically, but the movement, the hip hinge looks a little bit different. So if we were to break that down like frame by frame, there'd be a couple things that we'd be looking at. But really, I just want you to see the two differences. Okay, she's a volleyball player. She was a fifth-year senior at the time. Pretty good. She had one major injury in her career. So that young man, he had ACL surgery reconstruction for 4.5 months prior to these videos. I just want you to keep that in mind as well. This one, they were given the same instructions. You guys see? You guys can see. You get it. So they're standing there and they're doing unilateral. So they're standing on one leg and they're reaching the different targets. They were told the same instructions, but you'll see him do something completely different than her. He wasn't really listening to the instructions. Standard. And look at him. Like his hands go up here, her hands go down here. Just little things, little cues that we can look and just observe about our athletes that are going to tell us something. You don't have to be the one that knows what it tells, but it's good to see. Okay with that? Here's one I really want you to pay attention to. Remember what sport this guy plays. How's that look as a squat? Pretty good? Right there, I mean that still shot tells you a whole bunch. Right? Oh my goodness. So when I look at that at first, I was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? This guy's already played 3 years of professional soccer. He knows what he's doing. He's just working within his own constraints of his body. So if I look at him and I say, guess what, buddy? You're going under the bar and I want you to squat 245. What's he going to do? A, collapse. B, he won't show up for the workout. He's not going to do it. I wouldn't assign that to him because he just can't get there. He needs to do stuff to be able to get there. So he needs to look. So you look at his back here. This one right here tells a story. Look how much tension there is through his shirt. His first move, and then look at how much flexion. That's as deep as he can go in a squat. He is 20-something years old. We all used to be able to squat with our butts on the ground and be able to like suck on our toe at the same time at one point. And I can still do it. I've had hip surgery, like a whole lot lower than him. I wouldn't have him squat, but I need to find ways to get him to be able to squat. Some of his stuff needs to be geared towards mobility, for sure. Okay? 4.5 months after ACL reconstruction. But he squatted like that before he had ACL injury. That's how he squatted. And it's kind of funny, like you're just like, man, how did you ever do what you were supposed to do? Versus, I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good until, okay, see this last one on the far left? I don't know, it's pretty dark in the middle, but if you can see on the TV, you see she's about 90 degrees. She's sitting pretty level. And then she goes a little bit further. See right there? I don't know if you can see it, but she does what we call a butt wing. She gets to the bottom of it, and then she creates a little whoop. That's called a, yeah, so that's the reverse of what you want. We want her to be stable, yes.
Also in the first video of the man, it looked like his legs weren't tracking forward as they were coming out of it.
Sure.
Is that part of the knee?
Sure, hip, actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah, but good observation. Yeah, I mean, there's a million things you can pick apart when you still shot athletes. And you got to keep that in mind too. In this world of like social media and people posting things that they're doing, not doing, etc., you got to be a little bit careful with like, oh man, that person's terrible, they don't know what they're doing. Okay, so then I want you to go to this one. Okay, so I'm going to show you his. This is an overhead squat. So all we're changing is putting something in his hand and making him elevate it up overhead. Okay? Well, that's a hugely valuable assessment. Because all we've done is asked him to put his arms over his head. There's no resistance. He's just it's a hockey stick. Like, that's not a lot. But again, look at right here. This is all thoracic extension. This is all upper back extension in order to squat. Look, I'm squatting, James. Yep. But not ever underweight. Right?
Could it be that you said he had ACL, right?
Yep.
It seems that he doesn't want to put any pressure on that knee. And he just
Yeah, so which knee do you think he's not putting pressure on?
It appears to be the right knee.
Uh-huh. You putting pressure on the right or not on the right?
It's not on the right.
Yeah. Okay. Fair evaluation. Yep. But he had full range of motion in his knee, fully cleared to go under load. He had no restrictions.
Isn't that something that always happens with athletes coming off
Yep.
some surgery?
Yep. Great observation. Absolutely. Yep. But from a surgeon standpoint,
Go ahead.
you could have him. Just go ahead. Just whatever you want to do in the gym. He's good. He wasn't playing yet, but sure. This is part of our rehab as well as his screen. So we go back to a screen that we had of him before. He looked fairly similar. Great observation. All right. So then we go to her, and she looks like money in the bank. Nothing changes. Right? So, pretty good. Okay, so I have to do one more video, and then I'll get to the point, and then we can ask some questions, and we can have some further discussion, I hope. Before, I had to ask him if I could discuss his story, because I always do. I've used this video before, and I always say, hey, can I watch this video? Can I play this for people? And he said, yes, but the only way you can play it is if you play this too. Okay, so. That's it, that's the video, that's the whole thing, that's all he wanted you to see. But the reason that he sent that to me is you make sure that you tell everybody in that room that less than a year after I have my ACL reconstruction, I signed a pro contract again. He is playing pro soccer again. Now, I mean, kind of. He's in like this new Canadian league. He's in Winnipeg. It's still buried in snow. He sent me pictures of the field. But he said, just do me a favor, and I want you to tell people that there's always an opportunity. And I want you to tell people that injury doesn't end careers, it actually starts careers.
That's pretty powerful from a 20-something-year-old kid who couldn't squat, who put a hockey stick in his hand, and everyone was like, oh my God, there's no way that's an athlete. He's playing pro soccer. He's getting paid to play a sport. And he moves like that in a gym. So I can't stand in front of you and say everybody needs to move a certain way in order to be able to play sports well. I'd be lying to you. And anybody who tells you that, they're lying to you too. He could play a pro sport. He's had ACL reconstruction. He just had x-rays done on his hips. Hips look good. But I'm telling you, this guy had less than 10 degrees of internal rotation and less than 5 degrees of external rotation open chain hip mobility. He's played pro in Scotland. He's played pro in some other European countries. Now he's playing in Canada, and like, man, he's been through a lot for a 20-something-year-old kid. So anyway, that's the story. Lots of stories. Okay, rules to move by. So this, just going back to touch on the takeaways. These are the cues. I think it's going to go back to full screen. These are the cues that I'll give to athletes depending on who I'm talking to. The top one is carry your football. Not my slogan, somebody else's. Kelly Starrett, who's a PT in the US. Supple leopard, becoming a supple leopard. Anybody who's read it or familiar with it, great stuff. Really, really layperson's terms in terms of how he delivers knowledge. He says, carry your football. So he'll talk to your athletes about carrying. He's American, so they're all familiar with like American football. When the running back takes the ball from the quarterback, they typically are in this position here. And that's a good visual for visual learners. You have the bottom of your rib cage. Everybody put a finger on the bottom of your rib cage. You have this little tip, this little piece of bone called the xiphoid process. So don't push too hard. Somebody said you could fracture it, but if you do that to yourself, I think you're, I don't know, masochistic or something. So here, and then you have a bone right at the front called your pubic bone. And those two we like to draw as close together as possible without changing the way we're breathing or talking. Okay? All we really do is take this. Let's stick it out again. I want to draw them together. My voice is still the same. I'm still able to breathe. Guess what? I just activated my core. I want to always carry my football. So I walk around campus at this little school that I work at here, talk to all the athletes that I train on a regular basis, ask them how their day's going, and as we're talking, is you carrying your football? And they're like, oh yeah. Little cues like that. And athletes will ask each other, they'll just walk by each other and they'll just be like, sucker punch. Because all we want them to do is brace for a sucker punch all the time. Not so it'll bounce off you, but so if you get hit, you won't get winded. So a little bit of a brace all the time, so you're not hanging out in your low back. You're just creating a little bit of support through your midsection, through your torso. Okay? And then the other one is the rib cage pupil deal. Torque the floor or ground. So it's anytime you're in a stationary position. I think there was a dance. It's called twerking. Is that right? Is that what it's called? Is that wrong? No. Okay. So that's but what we're doing is anytime we're in a stationary position, we're sort of screwing the ground. So we want it. This is my foot. My hand fairly similar, so you can see a visual. I want to create an arch in the foot. Right. So I've gone from flat foot, create an arch, and then rotate up the hip. So I externally rotate the hip and I'll exaggerate this with one foot. I create the arch, you can't really see that because I have to take my shoe and sock off. And then I externally rotate the hip. Knee between the big toe and the second toe. That's all you need to remember. Knee between the big toe and the second toe. That's what it looks like from the front. There. Subtle. That's at the hip. Guess what's just turned off? Pelvic stability. On that simple move. Torque in the ground. Just torque the ground anytime you're stationary and standing. Or in half kneel. When I can do that. That front knee needs to drive into the ground, create a little bit of extra rotation. Yoga talks about it a lot in stability. Bend the bar. When you're lying flat on the ground, when you're going to press something overhead, bending the bar over your face. So if I'm going to bench press, I want to keep myself try to bend the bar before I go. Not to squeeze my shoulder blades together, but watch what happens when I try to bend the bar. There's the barbell, right? I'm holding it, I'm lying down, this is a bench behind me, bend the bar. So I've actively externally rotated my shoulder. I don't want pitchers to press overhead. Now I do. You're in a good position. There's congruent, the rotator cuff, the bicep tendon, the entire shoulder girdle is compact. The rotator cuff is called into question in its dynamic role to stabilize the humerus. And I can press from that position. Okay, external rotation at the shoulder, bend the bar. And then the other one is grip the ground at every opportunity. We've beaten that one, I think. Standing up out of your chair, sitting down to your chair, etc., 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 etc. Those are the rules, the takeaways that I give athletes. Those are your day-to-day. Class, between classes, walking up and down stairs, talking to your grandparents. It's all postural. Because if I can do that while I'm sitting in a chair, and I teach students this all the time, I wish these rotated, but like, pay attention. Right? If I can just engage my core, sit, tuck, pelvic tuck, rib cage together, carry my football. Teacher thinks I'm paying attention. I'm doing core work. I'm getting better at my sport. Like I'm becoming a better swimmer, and the teacher thinks I'm paying attention. That's what we talk about with high school kids, college kids. Like, I don't know, talking with your mom, your dad, somebody you don't want to listen to. Just work my posture like I do to my wife all the time. It's like she thinks I'm not listening, and I'm like, bam, core move. Thank you for listening. It's body position and body language. But working on your core all the time goes a long way with athletes. Okay, I think we're pretty close to 7. Is this like, do I get kicked out?
No, you're good.
No, you're good.
On the dot? Okay, so 7 on the dot, that was supposed to be like 5 to 7. Questions? That's a flamingo. The best one I could find thinking.
That's a blue one. Way to go.
Huh?
It's a good color.
Yeah, and I tinted it blue. I actually did that. That's the best I can do with technology.
It's a proper color.
Is that a toucan?
Yeah.
Ah, you had to do that. That's a flamingo. I typed it into Google.
That's it.
Which I'm also a big fan of the logo here. It's one of my favorites. So, all right. Questions, points of discussion on anything that comes to mind. Please. Yeah.
For the football, is it easier like walking or running? Like how you track? When not running.
Yeah. So great question. And that's relevant. Because that's an athlete asking me. How do I do that when I'm running? Don't. Don't do that while you're running. No, because if I tell him to do that while he's running, he's thinking about doing that, and then like his time goes to you know what, and then he's like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. This is like day-to-day stuff where we can work on this centralization so that it becomes subconscious. So that the next time I get to the starting blocks or wherever it is that I get mid-stance, I'm in a better position, right? The core is not meant to be strong to do like hundreds of forceful sit-ups. The core is meant to translate force from limb to limb or opposition or rotation and support the spine. If I'm talking baseball or I'm talking hockey or I'm talking basketball, track, like there's an element here that I need to be stable for sure. But there's also a rotary component that needs to be countered. Because if I'm running like this, am I going to be pretty quick? Probably. I mean, I might be. But I mean, probably not. And if I'm throwing a baseball and I'm kind of all over the place and I'm just like ripping through, but I don't know how to centralize my pelvis, or throwing something, shot put, or rowing, okay? So if I have a rower, I need to talk core in a whole different language to a rower. Why? Yeah, different motions, but rowers are sitting in hip flexion all the time. And if I ever gave a rower a sit-up, I'd actually probably be doing them a bit of a benefit. Because the hip flexor and the rectus abdominis, which is the major like six-pack muscle, I don't have, but like somebody did in the picture, that's the one that helps them stay in that position. Guess what? Most athletes don't need to have a six-pack to be really good at core stability, or to be really good at the sport. It looks nice. You get extra money, Sports Illustrated, whatever. But like rowing's got to be treated differently than the track. But I still would give them core stuff on a daily basis to strengthen that. Absolutely. But that's a great question. No, don't do it when you're running, but do it as much as you can when you're not running. Do it in movement prep. Do it in cool down. Do it in class. Do it before you go to sleep. Do it your first step out of bed in the morning. Do it every time you stand up. Do it every time you walk. There's a lot of opportunities to do this stuff. You don't need to go see somebody. Once you know how to do it, you can do it. And that's the goal, I think, of practitioners, is like giving the athlete something that they can handle and take away and do on their own. I don't want to reach in people's pockets and take money. I want to empower them to be able to do it themselves. Because I know Ken's going to go tell somebody else, that guy's actually not full of, you know? He kind of knows what he's talking about. And then that next athlete will come see me. But empowering them to be able to do it. Yeah?
Cool down.
Yeah.
How important? What sort of things?
Yeah, so cool down. Great question. Depending on the sport, cool down is meant to return the body safely from an elevated level of stress to homeostasis. So don't go from running a huge marathon and jump into an ice tub. Let your body get somewhere closer to normal before you do that. Absolutely plays a role in recovery time.
how you're going to do it. A lot of static stretching, foam rolling, these kinds of things at the end of practice. Depending on the sport, again, it's got to be specific to the task that was just undertaken, right? So static stretching. Simplest way that I put this for athletes usually is whatever you just did, go undo it. Does that make sense? If I just had a baseball player just throw 85 pitches, bam, 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 I'm going to give him something real light. I'm going to put the resistance at the front. I'm actually going to have him unwind. Unwind. If I just had somebody row a whole bunch, and they've been in this flex position, I'm going to undo that, right? And I'm probably going to have them press a little bit. And like, I mean, that's a really simplistic breakdown, but I could do another 2 hours on cool down probably. But from that end, whatever you've just done, try to undo it. How many baseball players hit right-handed, go and swing in the cage left-handed? Not too many. I think it's pretty valuable. Not to be able to hit left-handed, but just to kind of undo that motion and allow the spine to sort of feel. I know oblique strains are huge, right? Obliques aren't meant to take the load that we take in baseball. All kinds of stuff going on with obliques and lats. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Question, back to the point where I think the gentleman talked about the comparison between the two-person with the squatting and the different movements. I was trying to figure out whether the comparisons were for showing one with efficient movement compared to one with inefficient movement pattern, or it was one that was without injury and one with injury.
Yeah, so I mean, if I didn't tell the injury, that wouldn't have really been relevant. I think you can look at that however you want to interpret it. That's efficient movement for her. That's efficient movement for him. It's not proficient, I don't think. Like, I wouldn't say, I want you to squat like this, and you'll be pretty set. I would say, I want you to squat closer to this, and you'll probably have a higher quality of athletic career. But it's also to demonstrate two performing athletes. That was just coincidence that he had come off ACL surgery. We had spent like hours and hours together, so I said, hey, can you get in this video? And he was like, yep. But he moved like that before ACL surgery too. So if I had just said, if I didn't tell you he had ACL surgery, it's still relevant. Because he looked just like that before ACL. So our job during his ACL recovery from month 4 to month 12 was addressing that. Yeah, so we identified that in his rehab process, right? And then we didn't really have too much to work on, other than she just looked at her shoulder once, kettlebell overhead, it was not pretty. All right, any other questions? No? Okay, I appreciate your time. I think I have some contact information here. I'm happy to answer emails. This is my Instagram. I'm relatively novice at the Instagram thing. There's some pretty valuable stuff on there that I read and do and, I don't know, take from other people and learn as we go. I'm happy to answer emails. You can email me there anytime. I do use WhatsApp. I just won't put my phone number up there. I'm happy to discuss anything further. I hope you got at least one thing out of tonight. Don't believe Canadians in terms of sports performance. I don't know, whatever it was.